revolutionary. I am a revolutionary.
Every couple years we get a movie that shows us just how racist the fabric of America really is. And oddly enough, every couple years that movie stars Daniel Kaluuya. I'm sure there's a connection there, I just haven't found it yet. But guys, on today's video, we're talking about Judas and the Black Messiah. And this is based, not even based on a true story, this is a true story following the death of Fred Hampton, the chairman of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. And I have to say, this movie took me through a roller coaster of emotions. I laughed, I cried, I was angry a lot. Because this movie shows just how far the FBI was willing to go to slow the Black Panther Party down, and just the extreme measures they were willing to go through to actually stop them. But that was not really what pissed me off. What really got my gears grinding, what really got to me, what really angered me was Bill O'Neill, the character played by Lakeith Stanfield. No matter how you try to advance your cause, no matter how you try to move forward, there's always going to be someone who sees self ahead of the greater good. And this movie is aptly titled Judas and the Black Messiah. And you see the biblical allegories there, Judas and the Messiah, Jesus and Judas. Fred Hampton represents the Messiah for the black community. Because guys, remember this, Fred Hampton was 21 years old when he died. Let that sink in. He was 21 years old when he was assassinated in his sleep by the FBI. A child, a kid, he was barely able to drink, and yet they killed him. They felt that he was such a grave threat to the national fabric of the United States of America that he had to be assassinated. A kid with radical ideas, you know, free lunch for children, health care for the poor, and economic mobility for the disenfranchised. Wow, such disgusting ideals. Or wait, are those ideals actually being propagated by America today? Are we not pushing for these? So you're telling me a black kid back in the 60s was radical enough to push these ideas forward, and because it came out of the mouth of a black kid, it was deemed worthy of death? But even then, we know how America functions. We know how the systems are in place to keep people down, but actually watching it really does something to you. And that's what this movie does. As I'm watching Judas and the Black Messiah, I'm seeing in real time just what's happening. Granted, I understand the propaganda message behind the Black Panther Party, how they're radical, how they did this, how they did that. But let's get a brief history of the Black Panther Party and how it was started by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale in Oakland. It started because of the Great Migration West. During World War II, a lot of people went overseas to actually fight in the war. So there was a lot of former slaves in the South that migrated because of the Jim Crow laws to the North and the West. Granted, we always talk about how the South was racist, but it's when these guys went North and West, we saw that it wasn't just the South. There was racism in the North, in Chicago, as we saw in this movie. There was racism in the West, as we saw with the Oakland riots and all of that, and why they actually created the Black Panther movement, because unarmed black kids were being shot. What is that? Why does that sound so familiar? Because we're in the 21st century, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2021, and it's still happening to this day. So the things they're fighting for are still permeating and still happening to this day. So Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, who were kids in school, they started finding out just how fucked up the laws were, and decided, you know what? Who polices the police? So they formed the Black Panther Party. They follow police around with loaded guns to make sure, you know, if you're gonna arrest somebody, you arrest them, but there's no need to rough them up, there's no need to shoot them, because if you do, we're gonna shoot you back. And that's the basis of the Black Panther Party, protecting their own community. Then they started giving kids free breakfast. They started fighting to build clinics for the impoverished neighborhoods. And it wasn't strictly a black thing. As we saw in the movie, we saw Fred Hampton create the Rainbow Coalition, and that's where Fred Hampton comes in. He joined the Black Panther Party, but Fred Hampton was different. Fred Hampton was young. He was younger than Huey P. He was younger than Bobby Seale. He was about 18, 19 when he joined the Black Panther Party, and he rose quickly because of his ideals and what he saw and how he could change the world. And the FBI took notice. J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI for almost 40 years. Think about that. Someone who joined the FBI in the 30s, right? Stayed all the way to the 70s. Think about the ideals that this man has in his head as the world is evolving. His view on race, his view on pretty much anything progressive is stuck in the mindset of someone born in the late 1800s. Yet he was in charge, and we saw the levels that he went through to make sure that Fred Hampton got. But all that is fine. It's not fine, but it's okay, because this movie showed us that nothing that we haven't seen before. White people are gonna white people. Racist whites are gonna racist whites. And that's just the fabric of America. But what really made this movie, what really showed the power of this movie was Bill O'Neill. The character that Lakeith Stanfield plays. How he sold out Fred Hampton. How he was an FBI informant. He interwove himself into the very fabrics of the Black Panther movement. And it wasn't just him. We saw other characters throughout. It wasn't just him. It was a slew of informants infiltrating the black movement for a couple of dollars. We saw this in Queen and Slim. Like, again, another Daniel Kaluuya connection where people are putting the self over the group. And as I'm watching the movie, I have to say this. Lakeith is a phenomenal actor because I love him in everything I see him in except this movie. And if you have an actor that you love in shows like Atlanta, you love when he plays his own movies like Sorry to Bother You, or when he was in freaking Get Out, right? He's a lovable character. He's an actor that portrays emotion. So when we see him in this movie, and I know he's a good guy, but I was so angry, I was so flustered. It evoked an emotion in me that I haven't felt watching a movie in so long, that it just anger boils. Because not only is he betraying them, he's getting paid. We see as the movie progresses, and the moment he gets, even his outfits change, his swag changes, and he even sets them up, walks away, laughs, and he's underlyingly setting them up to fail while they're trusting him more and more. And as the movie progresses, we see just how deep it goes, just how deep his betrayal goes. And I like the fact that they interwove the documentary that the actual Bill O'Neill filmed in the late 80s into the movie, because it shows that this guy was so delusional that he actually believed he was fighting for a cause greater than himself. In that itself lies the problem. This movie, the story, the very nature of Judas and the Black Messiah, the biblical allegory of Judas and the Messiah being a Christ-like figure, Fred Hampton being the youngest leader in the Black Panther Party, and how he was rising and how he was bringing national attention to the Chicago chapter, eclipsing the other chapters, how he formed a rainbow coalition, because it's not just about black rights, it's about human rights. He reached out to the other black gangs, he reached out to the Hispanic gangs, he even reached out to the poor white community. And I actually like the fact that he did, because ultimately, besides skin tone, our economic and social standings are pretty much the same with poor white people in America, because if you're not a rich aristocrat, or you're not one of those rich bigwigs, you're really not represented by the country. So I like the fact that he formed this coalition, and it was working. Change was happening, and that had America shook. And this movie showed so much. Fred Hampton, Daniel Kaluuya brought him to life. And every time he talked, I got chills. Shit, I wanted to join the Black Panthers because I saw what he was teaching, I heard his message, and it was awe-inspiring. A better America than what we've had. But again, the status quo must maintain because the racism permeates. This movie, the performances themselves, where do I even go? The performances or the movies? Let's take a second to talk about some of the characters, because we touched on Bill O'Neill's character. Just thinking about his name pisses me the fuck off. We talked about his character. We saw Fred Hampton in the pillar that he was, the Messiah-like figure that he was building himself into be, and he would have succeeded had a Judas not entered his ranks. But then we have Dominique Fishback, who plays his girlfriend Deborah Johnson, who was right there with him, who helped him build. So it's not just a black man ascending. He had a strong black woman next to him. And then we have Roy, the FBI agent, played by Jesse Plemons, who just goes to show that he's almost worse than J. Hoover. Because think about it. J. Edgar is who he is. He's fucked up. We all know it. He's racist. He's counter everything, right? But he doesn't pretend not to be. Roy actually pretends that he's doing some greater good. And it's not until J. Edgar asks him, what if your daughter brings up a black guy? You come to realize, he's not really that progressive, is he? He's not really in it for the betterment of it all. It's all because of his status quo. And all these moving parts. Fred Hampton was 21 years old. You have the FBI. You have the director directly involved with it. You have spies infiltrating the Chicago police. All these things circulating to stop a 21-year-old who wanted to better the world for the impoverished, who wanted to better the world for people who weren't as economically blessed as others. Judas and the Black Messiah. The biblical allegory is there. Jesus came to buck the system that was already in place. And the same things that Jesus was spewing, Fred Hampton was spewing too. So it goes to show that this level of economic classism, this level of racism, this level of fucked upness in the world permeates thousands of years, because Jesus was way back then and he was fighting for these things. Fred Hampton fighting for these things in the 60s alongside other civil rights leaders, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. And here in 2021, we're still fighting for these things. Hell, we were protesting last year in 2020 for the same shit. It shows the very fact. It's one thing to hear about it. It's one thing to read these stories. It's one thing to find out just how deep the FBI's raids went. It's another thing to actually visualize it. And this movie did just that. This movie gave me goosebumps. It gave me chills. The soundtrack went with the movie. The performances, everything made it a perfect storm of what the fuck just happened here. Did this really happen? Yes. Is it fucked up? Yes. Can things change? I hope so. Because overall, watching this movie really showed me, I mean, I knew it because I studied these things, right? Let me watch my mouth. This is YouTube. This is a public forum. Let me watch my mouth. But I studied these things, and visualizing it, seeing it, and the movie being a focal point of not just racist white people, but taking Bill O'Neill's character, the worst snake, the worst pieces of shit that you can have in society, and showing us that this movie is not glorifying him. It's actually condemning him. And it just shows how fucked up that type of mentality can be, and it's how detrimental one snake in the field can be. One snake in the grass can fuck up the entire structure, and that's what happened. And with the death of Fred Hampton, the assassination, that was the domino that actually destroyed the Black Panther Party. So they were successful. Not via any other method, not white terror or any of that, but by infiltrating us, using our own kind, and using that person to permeate and spread the disease of betrayal throughout. That's a lot. But anyway, guys, that's my thoughts on Judas and the Black Messiah. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, binge on.